They would even maintain it, the person who's working got electrocuted.
It's not bad.
Yeah, but
What a different
because
world.
apparently they tried to do something with the power.
In those days, we always won.
And like spark something else.
Okay.
Here we go.
Later broke down.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to New York City Housing Authority's Audit and Finance Committee meeting. Today is April 16, 2024. We welcome everybody to the meeting. We have audit committee members in presence, external auditors from Deloitte, as well as finance team, some law department members also. Before we start, I'd like to just point out, please place all your mobile devices in silent or vibrant mode so that it doesn't create disturbance in the meeting. For the presenters, I would like to point out that when you are speaking, please press the green light button on your mic so that everybody can hear. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed, so it is important that everybody can hear. And when you are not speaking, please turn off the green light so that it will show red light on your mic and it doesn't create disturbance that way. So, for the record, Avik Das next to me will proceed with the roll call for this meeting.
Hi, good morning everyone, and thanks. Good morning everyone, thanks for joining this meeting. We have with us our AFC committee members. AFC committee chair, Mr. Victor Gonzalez.
Here.
AFC independent committee members, Mr. Mark Kaplan.
Present.
Mr. Richard Kuo.
Here.
From the Office of the Chief Executive Officer, we have Vilma Hueters. From Internal Audit and Assessment, this is Anil Agarwal.
Here.
Myself, Avik Das. And from Finance, we have Anika Lescott Martinez,
Present.
Jeffrey Lesnoy,
Present.
Arlene Neves,
Present.
Amita Patel.
Present.
And from Law, we have Catherine Magren.
Present.
From Deloitte, we have Jill Stomaha,
Present.
Bobby Soni,
Here.
Dashan Patel.
Here.
So we have the quorum in terms of the audit committee and we can start the meeting.
Thank you, Avik. Thank you, Mr. Committee Chairman. Just to let you know, we have mainly two items in the agenda today, which is Audit and Finance Committee minutes from the last meeting of December 12, 2023, as well as Deloitte status update on the 2023 single audit. So we would like to start with approval of the Audit and Finance Committee minutes from last meeting of December 12, 2023.
So moved. Second.
I have a few questions before we approve the minutes. On the first paragraph, on number one, I just want to point out that on the indirect cost rate, NYCHA is in fact eligible to apply for it under OMB Circular A. Can you hear me? Under OMB Circular A87. Now, whether it chooses not to use it is one thing. But I understood from our last meeting that Jill was going to check on it and get back to us further. I don't know if that happened. But all I know is that there's two indirect cost rates that the city is eligible for. One is this for the central indirect cost rate, which is from OMB, from purchase, from personnel. All of those central office costs can be applied for by the city of New York and receive reimbursement from the federal government. That's one. NYCHA is not directly involved in that, but NYCHA is a recipient as part of it because it's getting federal money. We are eligible to get, the city of New York is eligible to get a citywide indirect cost rate. But second, NYCHA, I believe, is eligible to get indirect costs as well, if it applies for it directly. I don't know if it has applied or not, and that was my question on that first sentence. So I would like clarification of that at some later point, but in the meanwhile, the way the minutes read is satisfactory to me at this point. Second, I just have a couple of grammatical things. But I think we don't need to go into that at this point. These are just grammatical.
Yes, so whatever grammatical corrections you have or any spell check errors, you can please let us know and we'll try to correct them before we put the final minutes on the website.
Okay, so I'll just let the
Yeah,
staff
please.
know indirectly or directly, or should I raise that now?
I'm sorry, what's the
No,
question?
he's like, it's technical stuff.
Technical, I'll raise later with the staff.
Right, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So as far as I'm concerned, the minutes are acceptable.
thank you, Mr. Fu, thank you, Mr.
So do you need
Chapman.
a vote?
So, yes, please, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you everyone. So now we can proceed to the second part of the agenda, which is Deloitte's status update on 2023 single audit. That audit is divided into two components. One is the financial part, which relates to annual comprehensive financial report. And the other segment relates to compliance part. So both will be covered in the presentation being done by Deloitte. I'll invite Jill to do that presentation, please.
Thank you. So Deloitte is in the process of completing your 2023 audits for New York City Housing Authority as well as LLC 1. As of today, we have completed a number of our planning procedures as outlined on the screen in front of you. We've assessed Deloitte's independence as we're required to do each year. We are in fact independent. We've updated our understanding of NYCHA and LLC 1 through discussions with management and others throughout the organization. We've updated our understanding of the control environment, what may have changed as far as controls, processes, procedures, control owners throughout the organization. Again, we've done that through discussions with management team. We've assessed a preliminary materiality. Materiality is an amount that we determine each year and use that throughout the performance of our audit. We've also performed preliminary analytical procedures on account balances. Preliminary analytical procedures is really comparing information this year, amounts this year, to information or amounts from last year. Getting an understanding of what has changed, why variances occur, increases, decreases. And we're performing these procedures really to help us with our risk assessment. Where are we focusing our testing, our substantive testing? What account balances are we going to pay more attention to this year? The audit team has prepared audit confirmations related to legal, cash, investments, and debt. We've received and read minutes of governance committees, board of directors, and audit committee. And then lastly, Deloitte has held internal meetings with our audit specialist. Besides the team here today, there's a number of Deloitte professionals that support us related to information technology, pension liabilities, OPEB liabilities, claims, as well as leases. Those planning meetings have been performed on the Deloitte side. Moving into procedures that are in process. Testing of internal controls, including IT controls, so your business process controls over account balances, entity level controls, as well as your IT controls have been started. Testing of the following areas has started as well: cash, investments, capital assets, including your construction in progress and asset retirement obligations, CIP and AROs, operating receivables, accounts payable and accrued expenses, long-term debt, pension and OPEB, claims, tenant revenue and unearned revenue, subsidies and grants, and capital contributions. So we're going through the process, obtaining populations of these account balances, reciprocal populations for these account balances to test completeness, making our selections and working with management team to gain support. Two additional items I've highlighted at the bottom that we're starting. One is GASB 94. This is the new implementation around P3s, public partnerships, public-private partnerships. And we're starting our completeness testing procedures related to that new adoption. In addition, GASB 96, this relates to subscription-based IT arrangements, another new accounting standard that will be implemented this year. This is a retroactive adoption, so because NYCHA presents comparative financial statements, NYCHA is adopting this as of 1/1/2022. So Deloitte is beginning the process of testing both the 2022 balances as well as the 23 balances. We'll be testing both for completeness and accuracy, making certain that what the accounting and finance team asserts is the number is in fact accurate, and we will also test to make certain nothing is missing from the balance recorded. So throughout April, we'll also begin testing real estate transactions, any new real estate transaction that may have been entered into during 2023. We will test leases. As you may recall, last year, NYCHA went through a large adoption, recording lease obligation, lease receivables on the financial statements for the first time. We will be looking at year 2 this year, so we'll begin testing sometime this month. And then anything that I mentioned on the previous slide, we will continue testing through those account balances throughout April. Looking to next month, May, we will begin testing what we call GASB 49, or the environmental and pollution remediation liabilities, including lead paint assessment. We will be looking at changes from last year to this year, specific to the 49 liability. We will begin our expense testing. This is really operating expense testing. Deloitte performs what we call corollary or cycle-based work, and we will use our internal specialist to help us perform that work. Journal entry testing, including any adjusting journal entries that are made, we'll be looking at those next month. We'll test the consolidation and elimination entries between NYCHA and LLC1, cash flows, and then towards the end of May, we'll begin looking at the financial statements, reviewing the MD&A, looking and tying out the financials themselves, auditing the footnotes, and RSI. We will also draft the management representation letter in May. Moving to June, which is the last month for the financial statement audit, we will perform some final procedures, which include looking at going concern assumptions, testing subsequent events, anything that happened after December 31st, 2023, and then obtaining legal letters and legal letter updates from both internal and external counsel. So early to mid-June, we plan to engage our second level review partner to review the financial statements and any key deliverables that Deloitte will issue Our presentation to the audit committee is slated, I believe, for June 11th, 2024, at which time we will provide you with the results of our audit. And we anticipate being in a position to issue our audit reports final on both NYCHA and LLC1 financial statements shortly after June 11th, 2024. Maybe I'll pause there for just a moment before I go into the single audit. Are there any questions related to the status of the financial statement audits for NYCHA and LLC1?
Does the arrests which were brought to all our attention in the newspaper have any impact on your audit?
Deloitte has been made aware of the events that happened last month. We have had conversations with NYCHA management. We've also had conversations internally on the Deloitte side. We will be looking more closely at controls specific around procurement and micro purchases.
I would hope you look at every single control we've got.
We look at all of your key controls related to the financial statements, yes, and we will look at these as well this year. And any adjustments that are being made as a result of actions that are coming down from various parties as a result of what happened last month. My understanding is there's some changes that are being made as well.
Thank you.
Under the topic that you and I had discussed, that's the change of the lead testing and everything else, where we have to now go back again and retest the apartments. Will that have an impact on the finance? And if so, how much or how bad, percentage, whatever number you can give us?
I will address that. We haven't yet finalized the results, but the initial indications are that as the testing has continued, the positivity rate has continued to rise. So in last year's financial statements, the testing supported about a 35% positivity rate. We reflected that in the pollution remediation liability. At the moment, it's up to 43%. So just mathematically, that's about a 25% increase in the costs. There may be other impacts up and down to the liability, but that alone could be $800 million of increase.
Wow.
$100 million, is that what you said?
$800 million.
800 million, a lot of figures. Thank you.
I'll move into the single audit update. On your screen here in front of you, again, a reminder of the reports that we issue related to our single audit. There are 4 reports. I'm not gonna go through those right now. We'll talk about those more upon issuance of the single audit next September. At this time, I'm gonna turn it over to Darshan to take you through our preliminary assessment of major programs related to the single audit. Darshan?
Thanks, Steve. So this year, Housing Authority received about $4 billion in federal grants. $4 billion. And according to the OMB, the threshold for, based on the 4 million is 3 million. You have about 5 programs which is more than $3 million. 5 programs. So based on the risk assessment, we'll be again auditing Public and Indian Housing Operating Fund, Public Housing Capital Fund, and Community Development Block Grant, which we audited in 2020, but we are supposed to audit every 3rd year. So that's, and Public and Indian Housing Operating Fund, we audited last year, we're gonna audit again this year, only reason because of the material findings on the environmental corrections. And 14872 Public and Indian Capital Fund, HUD requires you to certify the expenditure from prior years. So we audit that every year. So 3 programs we're gonna audit this year for 2023. Out of 5. And total amount we'll be auditing is 2 billion. Any que-
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The compliance issue in terms of these grants, what exactly does that mean? In other words, is it the compliance with the amount of money that's given and spent according to the grant guidelines? Or is it a matter of, or does it also include performance as well as financials? I mean, could you please broadly define what compliance means?
So HUD, every April, comes up with a compliance is supposed to follow for each program, Public and Indian Housing Operating Capital Fund, Block Grant. Every year they come up in April, they issue a new guidelines, what auditor is supposed to follow from the guidelines. And we're supposed to follow 12 things, basically. It doesn't apply 12 things every year, but for example, the expenses charged to the program, your cash collection on the program, procurement, period of performance, you're going out of the budget, the reporting you did to HUD, if that is correct, and there is a lot of special tests they include. Special tests is all different kind of, like your REACT, I guess just the finding you have, material finding, environmental correction every year, there is a special test. They're asking auditors, make sure they have remediated all their deficiency in every given year. And that was added 2 years ago. And that's the reason you have a finding. But there's 12 things they tell us to audit every year. And that is for all the programs.
Right, so there's 12 compliance requirements for every federal grant. Not all 12 requirements are tested each year by your auditor. Many cases, OMB will say auditors need to test these 5, these 6 requirements. Doesn't mean that those awardees, so NYCHA in this case, you have to still make certain you're compliant with all 12 requirements, but from an auditor's perspective, OMB usually shortens that list and says auditors need to test 5 or 6 of the requirements. And it's all outlined in a publicly available compliance supplement that's on the OMB website. Almost always, allowability is a compliance requirement that's required to be tested by your auditor. Allowability means that the expenditure was made on an allowable expense. If the grant agreement said that you must spend this dollar on equipment, then we will test to make certain that dollar was in fact tested on equipment. That's almost always a requirement that we're supposed to test. Other requirements could be procurement. In order to spend that dollar on that equipment, you must go through a formal procurement process. And so then we would have to test that procurement process, make certain all of the processes, procedures are followed, documented, and that we can see that they were actually performed in accordance with the grant agreement. Period availability. The grant agreement, for instance, may say you must spend that dollar on that equipment between January 1, 2023 and July 1st, 2023. You have 6 months to spend that dollar. So we have to make certain that that dollar was in fact spent in that time period. So we're testing a number of different compliance requirements, all outlined by OMB, and making certain that NYCHA is following the grant agreement. If there's an exception or we find something where they're not following the grant agreement, that becomes a finding in our single audit report.
Do you take into account third-party reviews of programs, for example, from the city controller, for example, if they made a review of a particular grant program and they made a report or comments on it, would you also include that in your review?
Federal government has the regulations on that too. If a federal agency comes and reviews any HUD report reviews, and we are supposed to follow up on the findings the third party wrote, and if finding is not remediated, then we are supposed to make a finding in our report. But any other agency, like state agency and city, not allowed to put it in the federal report. Only federal.
But you also take into account any HUD comments about
Yes.
a program.
Yes,
So you would review the HUD comments or
Correct.
HUD reports concerning a particular grant.
correct.
And you would take that into your account for your compliance.
Yes. Supposed to follow up on the remediation of the findings, if HUD has any recommendations.
Okay.
And along that point, I think for the record, could Deloitte just explain what the material finding was in the Public and Indian Housing Operating Program for the prior year? Cause I think it's important.
So that is Public and Indian Housing Operating Fund. And one of the special tests, I've been doing a HUD program for many years. And 2 years ago, in a special test, HUD compliance requirements, they put it in saying, environmental remediation, like any remediation, water, building, anything you have to remediate. Is this all remediation done in any given year? That is a catchword, given year. You have to remediate in 1 year. In our case, we have a lead remediation going on. But is that done in every year? No. So we talked to the HUD, saying, explain what, this is not, cannot be done in 1 year. Can it take 5 years or 4 years? And they said, okay, you just have to make a finding on that, and that's it. Now, why it is material? Because the amount is material. We take what, OMB says to me, Mr. Patel say, you are allowed to take 5% of the expenditure as your materiality. Anything over that is a material, 5%, and they give us the percentage. It's not created by anybody else.
I have a question. Maybe you've answered it, maybe not, but I just want to be clear. So, who determines what internal audits have to be done? And are you in constant communications with those people? Whether it's a person, an agency, a department, who determines the internal audits, what has to be audited? And then, are they in communications with you guys?
Deloitte does not determine what internal audits will be performed by our clients. That would be a management decision.
Right.
Generally speaking, for my audit clients, we have communication, meaning Deloitte and the internal auditors do have communication on a regular basis. Oftentimes, when it comes to the determination of your internal audit plan, we typically see a copy of that plan, where internal audit is going to be focusing their times, may provide suggestions or comments for consideration. But ultimately, the decision on where internal audit focuses their time is an internal audit decision, not something that Deloitte would.
So then let me ask the internal audit team, who determines what has to be audited?
In general, Department of Internal Audit will decide that based on the risk assessment that they may do. But as you know, currently internal audit function is, there are plans to outsource that function. There was an RFP issued with regard to that. And we had received proposals which are currently going under evaluation.
So basically, you're telling me we still haven't cleared that up yet as to who's gonna be the new internal audit team?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Are we done?
I have nothing further. That completes our status update for the 2023 audits.
So from the Audit and Finance Committee members, does anybody have any additional questions?
Well, my last question is on FEMA. That's Superstorm Sandy money? Is that what we're talking about?
In the booklet, it says disaster, but that is not actual word, it's a typo.
Huh?
It's a community block grant,
Oh, CDBG.
CDBG.
And it's not, it
The
says,
number is
it
correct.
says disaster
Yeah,
grants
yeah.
from FEMA.
We realized after we submitted.
So is that correct or is that super?
Disaster is incorrect.
Huh?
Disaster grants from FEMA is incorrect. It should be community CDBG grant.
So it's not FEMA?
No, it's not.
CDBG.
Correct.
But for clarification, there are two kinds of CDBG. Is it the disaster version or the regular version?
Right now, we only have information, community service block grant 14 to 18.
Thank you.
So the ALN number is correct, 14.218, it's just the description that's incorrect, we apologize for that.
Okay, so as far as Deloitte is concerned, the Superstorm Sandy money has all been taken care of? Has all been spent?
No, it's
Or is it still ongoing?
it's still ongoing.
Ah, and how long ago was Superstorm Sandy? How long ago was that?
Probably
10 years ago.
10 years?
Yeah, I think so, 2013, I believe.
Yeah, 2013. So we're still spending that money?
Yes.
Oh,
I can only attest to the intense
Why-
damage that it performed.
I'm sorry?
The intense damage that hurricane caused was really horrible. So that it's gonna take them some time. There are still developments, still going through problems with that particular issue. I too thought that, this should be done by now,
Well-
and it's not. I mean, there's still development, still suffering from that.
I understand that, but shouldn't the money be spent within certain time frame
Oh, that I don't know.
from FEMA? Or they providing extensions every year or something?
I think that's a really great question for the sustainability team and in the asset and capital management group.
Right,
So happy to follow up on that.
thank you. I'd appreciate some clarification on that because, I'm sure local politicians down in that area wanna know what's going on.
It's taking that long.
Why is it taking over 10 years to spend that money? All right, appreciate that.
And sorry, I misspoke, resiliency team and asset and capital management, sustainability team does the environmental work.
Okay. Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Okay, so, yes, if there are no further questions, we will like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. It's 10:33 right now, and this meeting is being adjourned. Thank you.